Well, first, thanks a lot for this very warm welcome. And I always find it interesting when people speak about me and I'm listening, because I usually don't think of myself in those words. But yep, when you look at the CV, probably those words are there. But there is actually something bigger that I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how one idea can impact the life cycle of one company, and how we actually want to change everyday work and everyday environment for all of our employees. So all those 3,000 people plus, we actually want to change how work looks for them on a daily basis. When I decided to speak at this conference, I actually thought very hard about how to introduce my company, how to introduce my workplace, and which are the words that I can use to best describe Nelt and to bring it closer to the audience. Luckily, it turns out that more than half of the audience here actually knows what Nelt does. But if you ask us, here on the background, you can see our vision statement. It's one sentence that we, as a company, are extremely proud of, and we have crafted this last year in the process of, let's say, defining both family and corporate governance principles. And we have decided, together with the founders of the company, that we want to play in two industries. We want to play in distribution, and we want to play in logistics. And in those industries, we actually want to be the best that we can be in this region and also in Africa, because that's the other continent that we play in. Once we defined this vision, we actually thought, okay, how can we bring this vision into reality? We said, okay, in order to do so, we need to think about which characteristics, which values each one of us needs to have in order to make this vision a reality. So we came up with five symbols that you can see on the side, ranging from ownership all the way to winning mentality, that will help us make sure that our vision becomes reality on a daily basis for all of us. So here is just another visual of who we are and what we do. We have currently 9 markets on 2 continents and 3,800 people that obviously don't all speak the same language. And we have within Nelt, we count 14 companies, and we also have more than 80 principals and almost 30,000 customers. So, when you ask us why we are here, in order to make sure that we make this vision a reality, we wanted to ensure that we can really show who we are on a daily basis. So, probably the single most important part of our corporate DNA is our competitiveness. We are born winners, or at least we love to think of ourselves as born winners. We always go an extra mile, and we always try to deliver our best. And obviously, being competitive on a daily basis is not always easy. It's not always easy to oneself, and not to talk about colleagues or clients that we work with. But in order to measure competitiveness in the best possible way, we said, okay, the best possible way to do so, the most objective one, and the one that's closest to reality, is going through feedback. So, why feedback matters? Well-structured and well-intended feedback actually gives clear guidance on how to improve one's performance and how to make tomorrow better than today already is. Traditionally, feedback is given once a year and by your superior. So usually the person who manages your workload and manages your progress is the one who is actually in charge of evaluating your performance and giving you concrete measures on how to improve in the future. However, this traditional model is undergoing significant changes because business environment is significantly speeding up, and you need to make decisions quicker and in a, let's say, in a much more agile way, in a way that you make decisions as soon as you have minimal required information. You don't wait for perfect information. So as the business environment changes, the nature of feedback also changes. And how are we actually changing the system? In order to make feedback actionable, in order to make feedback close to reality, we have decided to give each and every colleague in our company an equal voice. We wanted to allow every single person to evaluate their colleague, whether that colleague is their superior, their team member, or their peer. Furthermore, we also wanted to give an opportunity to provide feedback in a structured way, but in a way that's user-friendly and, let's say, fun to use. And we also wanted to make sure that this feedback is as objective as possible by crowdsourcing different pieces of information. We also wanted to make sure that the time that we actually spend on giving feedback decreases, so it becomes more of a nice thing to do than something that we must do. Further, when we said, okay, these are the things that we want to achieve, we thought really hard about what it is that we can do within the existing system that will help us serve the needs that we have. We are currently using SAP, let's say probably one of the best softwares there are. However, SAP is very strict in allowing only downward feedback. And this is something that we have been getting as an information from all of our organization, that they wanted more. They wanted the opportunity for their voice to be heard. So we said, okay, since the current solution is not giving us what we need, we have to look elsewhere. We looked into what's available on the market. We figured out that there is nothing as sexy as we would like to be. So we found a partner in a local company that basically made our vision a reality. More about that will come from Đorđe once he actually starts speaking about his part of the work. But what it is that we expect from this application that we are developing together, we expect that we will have stronger emphasis on behaviors that we want to enforce in our organization, because they will be there in everyday work lives. We are sure that people will not be forgetting them, and we are sure that people will actually think about them as much more tangible than they currently are, when they're just on posters and when they are reminded about them only once a year. Furthermore, we are also sure that by crowdsourcing feedback, we'll have much easier time to identify those people who can serve as role models and change agents within the organization. So we'll be able to launch specific initiatives by targeting certain people who will be advocates of those initiatives within the organization. Furthermore, recent research shows that one of the main sources of dissatisfaction at the workplace is the perception that annual feedback is completely detached from reality, detached in a way that it represents only the last quarter or let's say 4 months, and not actually the full year that we are trying to look into. So people quite often feel that they're being judged on a very short period of time, and they don't really have their ups and downs covered in the annual evaluation. Therefore, we also believe that this application will have a positive effect on motivation of individual employees. Obviously, this app is just the beginning. It's not an end. And what we expect to get further from this app is that we want to have back-end information as a trustworthy source for both team and individual performance reviews. We also want to build a very powerful database which will serve as a foundation for HR analytics, a database which will help us identify which employees are at risk of retention, which employees are high potentials, which employees are those that have the most positive impact on the organization. Therefore, we expect to have the overall improvement in the performance management process. And now, with all of that being said, I'm actually leaving the stage to Đorđe, and Đorđe, thank you for helping us with this.
Thank you, Milica. Before we continue, I just have to ask everyone for one really big applause for ICT Hub for organizing this phenomenal conference. Like, really, really good job, everyone. We work quite a lot with ICT Hub, and I'm really impressed. There's almost like every week another IT conference or digital transformation conference, but you guys has done a phenomenal job. So Milica has told you what she's trying to achieve and why she's trying to achieve, and now we're just going to talk about a little bit how we're going to achieve this. A little bit of background story about us is that we have established a company in 2010 and started intensively working with startup communities, primarily New York and San Francisco, and we have built 30 different startups so far. 6 have been successful, and we continue to work in this space. But what happened is that 2 years ago, the officially digitization has been proclaimed. And it's not exclusive right now only to startup community and to, let's say, kids to be in a startup space. Now you have corporations who have figured out, and now they're going into this game and they're changing everything. No longer, in my belief, the startups are these fast and agile companies. They also bring a lot of inexperience and amateurism with them, while you have a corporate, you guys, which have experience, knowledge, and you're no longer that old as they expect from the corporations. Like, I'm turning 40 this year, and they usually labeled me as a startupper, but now many of you, we are at the same age. So 2016 came about, and we have started working more and more with the corporations who want to adopt startup way of thinking. And this is something that we are focusing on. We don't want to jeopardize the change the way we work and why we created these companies, but more and more corporations are now adopting this model, and this is becoming a standard. So this is what 30 Hills looks like from the inside. We have a variety of people such as linguists, programmers, web and mobile designers, HR analysts, and a few dogs in the office. And so the first thing is how we are going to do it. The first question is always how much is going to cost and how long it's going to be. In order to answer this question, we had to apply design thinking approach and basically started communicating through design versus documentation. We immediately jumped into the design and started presenting Milica with some ideas. What we love is that she didn't come with a solution. She came with the problem, and she came with an idea and allow us to start working on a problem. So this is one of the difficulties on our side is that we quite often are handed a proposal or RFP, build me this. There's no feedback. You're not allowing yourself to get a feedback. So there's a different way of procurement has to happen on a corporate side, so you actually get something out of these potential vendor startup companies. And on the one side, you can see version 1 is what we created, and which this allows everyone is to actually it becomes real, and it's on the paper, so you can see, and this allows client to start testing, to start thinking, and it also allows developers to start creating specs and wireframes, and this is totally okay if it's only on a high level. This is the web part of the administrator portal, and this is now the final version of the tool, which will have much, much more robust reporting and many things that we didn't even think when we started analyzing and creating this tool together. So the step 2 is to convince Nelt to build this in a startup model. And it took almost a year of talking, intense talking with the group, with the various different sectors to find a way to cooperate. But when you find an innovator within an organization, everything starts moving much, much more quickly. And it's always the emphasis on finding the innovators within a group. And which one of the speakers prior said, and which I really liked and it struck me, he says, innovation is not exclusive right of anybody, one person or for one group. Everybody has a chance, or everybody should have a chance to be innovating within the organization. So once we establish, okay, we're going to build this as a startup and we're going to apply the lean startup methodology. I'm not going to talk about this. You should read, and you've heard too many times already today what the lean startup is. But one of the things it says, you have to have MVP, minimum viable product, and it has to be time set to deliver this. And this is usually shouldn't be more than 2 to 3 months. So you give yourself some kind of constraint. This gives you also a very fixed budget and a fixed time frame, which it doesn't give you what you're actually going to build. And it's really hard for procurement within organizations to buy something without knowing what they're buying. But what's good about it, there's no breaking the timeline, there's no breaking the budget. This is very fixed. And so we decided to give ourselves 3 months to build the MVP. And then we also decided to use the agile Scrum methodology, which again, it's a huge problem for procurement. And we're solving this by creating a dedicated team for the Nelt group, in which they are going to work the whole year on various digital initiatives. And this is, from my side, a revolutionary. It's a very, very brave move for the other side, but it's not easier on our side. This is also new for us. As a representative from the startup community, it's a hard and scary for us as well to figure out how we are going to work with the corporate office. There's different billing methods, different levels of procurement procedures and all of that. So we're all figuring this out together. So it's happening right now. And what we decided, one of the agile principles, is that we need to build cross-functional teams. This doesn't mean Milica is going to come up with something and hand it off to a vendor, which has a contract to provide list of specifications and to be give some kind of like a feedback at the end. We are building these cross-functional teams, meaning we are creating joint team together. So people from her team, and Milica as well, are joining our experts on the design, user experience, and development, and they're becoming this new team. Sometimes agile specifically, it says that it used to be a methodology and now became a framework, which means like you can pick and choose different things how to adopt to your organizations, but you can ignore some of the very basic fundamental things, such as a cross-functional team. If the team doesn't sit together and if the team doesn't work together, you're not agile. There can be developers and project managers and clients and product owners. Each of these key components, these people have to be and become a team. This is basically a process. Process is a process. You can create your own process. This is one of the sample processes, but which is important to say that now we have tools and frameworks to manage innovation. Innovation is not something crazy and unknown. We have a very specific tools and processes how to manage innovation, how to get from point A to point B, and guarantee that there is a result on the other side. And which is also important that they say you should fail, and when you fail quickly. That as soon as possible, you realize this failure, and this is why design thinking approach, it's excellent because it allows you to visualize, to test, to animate, to do many different things in order to validate your idea before you even start. And try this explaining to procurement. You're going to buy something that you're going to very quickly throw it out. It's mission impossible as of now. So what's next for us, since we set up MVP for ourselves? Next thing is to actually get in that feedback loop that we can start working on machine learning process, that we started this crowdsourcing app become a much smarter and much more accurate. So basically, what it means if somebody gets a negative point, what it means if you get 10 negative points, what it means if you get frequently negative points, or if it has something happen in a short period of time. This is, we all have to learn machine how to understand and do these kind of things, and we can't do it alone without knowledge of HR and analytics experts within organizations who actually know their organization best. Second thing is also we have to work on a gamification process. We have to make sure that people actually use the tool. And this is one of the many advantages, but one of the most important is that they actually, people use it, they understand, and they come back to this tool. Even though this is a very, you can say maybe a boring tool, this, again, it does something, and it has to be interesting so the people come back. There's no difference between a game and this app. The same principles applying, the same gamification models are applying to the HR application as well as any other PC games or so on. As well as chatbots. I don't want to get into chatbots. You've heard about all of this, but Nelt basically wants to speed up the process of hiring, and this is what actually is something we've done internally, tested on our own. We built Chat Sophie. We tested on our internship classes, and this is something that Milica liked, and then we're going to try adopting and try building a chat app for Africa from Serbia. So this is going to be interesting, as well as then continue on a digital app journey together, because Nelt has a huge demands and needs us a partner who's going to work with. So one of the things that when we're in a project-based mode, we agree project per project, and the project stops, and project has to be tested, it has to be rolled back. But now what we are going to try is actually have a rolling team that it's going to jump from one project to another. If one stops, we can quickly get on the other project, come back to the first project, and basically try to implement agile within a very structured and huge organization such as Nelt, and try thinking about the infrastructure within this organization, which is a totally different beast that we have to start thinking how to integrate with them. And so that's our case, and since we are both athletes, we like to beat the clock, so thank you.
Good job beating the clock. Thank you, guys. It was great. We have a couple of questions from the audience. So first of them is what were the biggest obstacles to start the partnership for both of you? Who's going to go first?
I started a partnership with Nelt many years before Milica came. So the biggest obstacle is actually figuring out what we are going to do and how we are going to do it. We have tested, first we did one prototype within a group, and it's been rejected 3 times. Like, wow. An owner of the company has pulled me 3 times back, has put the project back on the table, and the top management has rejected the project 3 times. Like, I respected it totally, because you see that you have the organization which founder is not enforcing his own will, but it's respecting the management decisions. And as well as talks a lot about when you have CHRO, which I had to Google when I first seen Milica. But it talks about a lot what it means for the organization to bring the HR on a C level. That means that they really care about people.
Great, Milica,
so
I have something to add.
Obviously, yes, as Đorđe said, they were part of Nelt quite a while before I came, but they always worked on projects with very tangible financial value. So there was always a euro sign associated with those projects that they worked on, whether it was procurement, whether it was sales. It was always very easy to measure the impact of the products that they were developing. So first, I had to go and convince the audience, being my peers in the executive board, and obviously the shareholders themselves, that this specific product that we are developing is actually going to save time and therefore save money for the company. And also, it will have a positive effect that we cannot measure at the moment, but that will come through increased motivation.
Okay, and one more question for Đorđe, actually. How long were your sprints with Nelt? How often did you post updates and new versions based on your learning?
So the Scrum methodology, it says it shouldn't be more than 1 week to 1 month. We prefer 2-week sprints. This gives you just about enough time to plan, execute, and it's short enough that you can't miss your objectives. It's a short month, it's already too long, and a week is too short, and which frequently happens once the teams start rolling, and if the project or an app, it's big enough that you go into 1.5 years of development, team slowly starts falling out of the agile and going just in a simple Kanban, just pulling tasks from the top and start doing. This is one of the very specific cases which to always be worried. That's why I'm always acting as a process police. So I have to make sure the teams are aligned to work in like 2 weeks intervals. It's preferred.
Great. Thank you so much, Milica and Đorđe. It was great hearing from you.
Thank you.